Welcome to the Prescott Lab Podcast, not just theory, practical science for everyone. I'm Dr. Jonathan Prescott, a physician and integrative medicine researcher at the Ravenshade Institute for Human Health. Gentlemen, let's have an honest conversation. For decades, men have been fed one of the biggest myths in history that size is the ultimate measure of manhood. You've heard it in locker rooms, in movies, in the way guys joke with each other. Bigger is better. Bigger is victory, and if you're not, well, you've been told to wish you were. But I'm here to tell you after more than 30 years of examining, treating, and listening to men from every walk of life that this belief is not just wrong. It can be dangerous. In fact, what you think is an advantage might quietly be making your life harder in ways you've never imagined. Before we dive in, let me ask you for a small favor that makes a huge difference. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and hit that like button. I'm not asking because we're chasing numbers. Every like tells us you want more of these no-nonsense, science-backed talks about men's health. It's what fuels us to keep producing episodes that cut through the myths and give you the truth you actually need. Think of it as your way of keeping this conversation alive for you and for every man who needs to hear it. Because today, I'm going to share 5 truths about size that almost no one talks about, truths that could change how you see yourself for the rest of your life. And the very first one has nothing to do with the bedroom. It's about the attention, the assumptions, and the shadow that follows you when the world notices what you've got. Let's start there. Truth number 1, living under the size spotlight. Let's be real, gentlemen, some things about a man stay private. This isn't one of them. When you're noticeably bigger than average, it's like carrying a neon sign that only certain eyes can read. And once they do, you can't unring that bell. The awareness follows you not just in the bedroom, but in places you'd never expect to feel exposed. Think about the locker room. You're there to change, to shower, to get on with your day, but the moment you drop the towel, you can feel it. The pause in conversation, the sideways glance, the half smirk someone tries to hide. Maybe it's the public pool on a summer afternoon or the cramped medical exam room where you're focused on the doctor's instructions, only to notice the nurse exchanging a quick look over your chart. At first, sure, it can feel like a boost. When you're younger, maybe even flattering. But decades of it, it stops feeling like attention and starts feeling like surveillance. You're no longer just Mike or John, you're that guy, and every time you walk into a room, the label walks in first. One patient of mine, a 72-year-old retired high school coach, carried that label for over half a century. "Doc," he told me, "I've been the punchline since I was 16. The same tired jokes in the locker room, the same whispers at the gym." Eventually, he stopped playing pickup basketball, quit the community pool, and even avoided old friends. Not because he was ashamed, but because he was exhausted from being reduced to a single feature of his body. And then there are the assumptions. Some women approach out of curiosity, not connection, treating you more like a novelty than a man. Some men assume you're showing off even when you're just existing. I've even seen cases where the way a man's body looks under certain clothing has sparked accusations that had nothing to do with reality, the kind that can stain a reputation for years. This spotlight doesn't just change how others see you. Over time, it can warp how you see yourself. You start to wonder if people are interested in you or just in it. And that question, left unanswered, has a way of creeping into more private, more personal parts of your life. Truth number 2, when size hurts the one you love. There's a truth most men never see coming until it's too late. We grow up believing size is an asset, a gift, something that can only make our partner happier. But over the years, I've sat across from couples whose eyes told a different story. Couples who still loved each other deeply, yet found that the very thing they thought would bring pleasure was now bringing pain. Here's what many men don't realize. A woman's body changes with time. After menopause, the vaginal walls can become thinner, more sensitive, less elastic. Natural lubrication often decreases. The pelvic floor muscles may weaken. For a woman in her 60s or 70s, penetration that once felt comfortable, even exciting, can now feel tight, raw, or painfully stretching. If her partner is significantly above average, every movement becomes a negotiation between desire and discomfort. I remember one couple in their late 60s, married for over 40 years. They sat side by side in my office, holding hands. She looked down when she spoke. "I love him, but I dread it now." He kept staring at the floor, his voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt her." They tried everything: lubricants, longer foreplay, different positions, but the discomfort lingered. In the end, they had to completely reinvent their intimacy, focusing less on penetration and more on touch, connection, and closeness. They saved their bond, but it took honesty, patience, and letting go of what they thought intimacy had to look like. And it's not rare. I've seen men with perfectly average sizes stay sexually active well into their 80s because they didn't have to constantly navigate those physical limits. Meanwhile, some men with larger sizes quietly gave up intercourse altogether, not because they lost desire, but because every attempt risked hurting the person they loved most. It's one of the most sobering truths I've learned as a doctor. Sometimes what you thought was your greatest advantage in the bedroom can be the very thing that steals your closeness. And when that happens, the loss isn't just physical, it changes how you approach every intimate moment that follows. And in some cases, the cost isn't just measured in emotion or connection. Sometimes, it's measured in a single, sharp, unforgettable moment that can change your body forever. Truth number 3, the hidden injury risk of being bigger. Most men have never even heard the words penile fracture until they're lying in a hospital bed wondering how it happened to them. And yes, gentlemen, it can happen. It's not a bone snapping, there's no bone in there, but it's every bit as traumatic. It's a tear in the tough outer sheath, the tunica albuginea, that surrounds the erectile chambers, and when it tears, it usually happens at full erection. Under pressure during the heat of the moment when you're not thinking about physics, only passion. The tissue is stretched to its maximum, like a balloon filled right to the brink. One wrong angle, one slip, and that tension rips. What follows is unmistakable, an audible pop, a sudden collapse, swelling, deep bruising, and pain that makes you break into a cold sweat. Here's where size changes the odds. The longer the shaft, the greater the leverage when it bends. Think of a long tree branch. It takes far less force to snap than a short one if you push it at the wrong angle. Add in the fact that as we age, tissues lose elasticity, blood flow slows, and healing takes longer, and you've got a dangerous combination. I remember a patient in his late 60s, a man who'd been quietly proud of his size his whole life. One night, a slip in position changed everything. He came into my office pale, shaking, unable to meet my eyes. We sent him straight to emergency surgery. We repaired the tear, but his erections were never quite the same. Months later, he told me, "Doc, I wish someone had told me years ago that this could happen." And here's the reality most men don't consider: the very positions that seem the most exciting can be the riskiest. Rear entry. Certain partner on top positions, they can all put you in that danger zone where one miscalculated thrust can rewrite the rest of your sex life. It's a reminder that in the pursuit of pleasure, your body still plays by the laws of mechanics. Ignore them, and you may find yourself trading years of intimacy for one moment of recklessness. And sometimes, the consequences don't just happen in the bedroom. They can show up in places as ordinary and unassuming as your own bathroom. Truth number 4, the awkward bathroom reality. It sounds trivial until you've lived it. You'd think a man's trip to the bathroom is about as straightforward as it gets: stand, aim, go. But when you're on the larger side, even this basic act can become a daily negotiation. Let's talk public restrooms. In America, a lot of toilets have that high water level in the bowl, which means when you sit down, there's not much clearance. If you're longer, there's a real risk you'll end up dipping into cold, questionably clean water. And I can promise you, the first time it happens, you will never forget the shock. In Europe, the problem is different. The water level's lower, but the front of the bowl curves up higher. So instead of water, it's cold porcelain making contact. Either way, it's not the kind of refreshing you were hoping for. Younger men might laugh this off as a rare inconvenience. But for men in their 60s and beyond, the odds go up. Why? More frequent trips thanks to an enlarged prostate, weaker bladder control, or medications. Add in stiff joints or balance issues, and suddenly sitting becomes the safer choice, meaning this awkward geometry problem comes into play several times a day. One patient in his mid-60s told me he'd mapped out every rest stop along his favorite driving route, not for the snacks, not for the gas prices, but because he knew exactly which ones had the high-water toilets, and he planned his stops to avoid them. His wife thought it was a quirky travel habit. For him, it was about avoiding discomfort and embarrassment in public. It's not glamorous, it's not something you brag about, but it's one more way that extra size, the thing so many men think they want, can quietly make life harder in places no one ever warned you about. And sometimes, those quiet inconveniences are nothing compared to what happens when that extra length changes the way a surgeon approaches your body. Truth number 5, when size complicates the surgeon's job. Most men never imagine their size could matter on an operating table. You don't bring it up during a checkup. You don't put it on medical forms. And you certainly don't expect it to work against you when your health is on the line. But after decades as a urologist, I can tell you it can. Many of the surgical tools we use in urology, especially for procedures done through the urethra, are designed for the average male anatomy. That's not laziness, it's just how medical engineering works. Instruments are built to navigate a certain distance with control, precision, and minimal trauma. But when the distance is significantly longer, everything changes. Imagine trying to thread a fine wire through a long, narrow tube. The longer it gets, the harder it is to keep your aim steady. In the human body, pushing farther isn't just awkward, it increases the risk of scraping, tearing, or damaging delicate tissue. This becomes especially important for older men because the odds are high that at some point you'll need a transurethral procedure, often for an enlarged prostate. In a man with an average size, the instruments can reach the prostate cleanly and efficiently. But in a man with extra length, we sometimes have to adjust our angle, improvise with tools, or take more time than we'd like. And in surgery, more time under anesthesia means higher risk, bleeding, infection, complications. I'll never forget a patient in his 70s. Strong heart, otherwise healthy, came in for what should have been a straightforward procedure to relieve his prostate obstruction. But his anatomy turned it into a challenge. What should have been a 1-hour operation stretched to nearly 3. He healed. But the extra trauma left him sore and slowed his recovery for weeks. His words to me later were quiet, almost embarrassed. "I never thought it could be a problem." And that's the thing, no one tells you these details when you're younger because no one expects you to think about them. But the truth is, in the world of medicine, sometimes smaller is simply easier, safer, and faster. And when you've seen what I've seen, you realize these so-called advantages aren't the measure of a man at all. Conclusion: why average might be your best gift. Gentlemen, we've walked through 5 truths today. We've seen how the spotlight of attention can weigh heavier than you ever imagined. How love and intimacy can be complicated when comfort is replaced by pain. How one wrong move can cause an injury that changes everything. How even the most private daily moments can be made awkward. And how the operating room, the place you trust with your health, can turn into a more dangerous place simply because of anatomy. And when you put them all together, the picture is clear. Bigger doesn't always mean better. In fact, for many men, being right in the middle, that comfortable, unremarkable middle, is the sweet spot. Fewer risks, fewer complications, more freedom to enjoy your life without worrying about accidents, pain, or unwanted attention. I've met men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s living full, vibrant, deeply satisfying lives, not because of what's between their legs, but because of what's between their ears and in their hearts. They invest in their health, in their partners, in their passions. They measure themselves not by inches, but by the quality of the lives they lead. Your value isn't determined by size. It's determined by how you carry yourself, how you treat the people you love, and how you care for the body you've been given. A strong heart, good circulation, balanced hormones, and a partner who trusts and enjoys you, those are worth more than any measurement. So if you take anything from this episode, let it be this: appreciate what you have. Stop chasing illusions. Start working on the things you can control: your health, your habits, your relationships. That's where real masculinity, real confidence, and real satisfaction come from. If this talk opened your eyes, I'd like to ask one last thing. Hit that like button. Not because we're counting clicks, but because every single one tells us you want more of these straight, unfiltered conversations about men's health. It's the fuel that keeps this channel alive. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and leave a comment, even just a 1, to let me know you were here and listening. And if you disagree, leave a 0 and tell me why. I read them all. Take care of yourself, gentlemen. Stay strong, stay curious, and remember, the best years aren't behind you. They are the ones you choose to build from this moment on.